spent over $50 million with Google Ads alone for e-commerce brands in the last 5 years. And in this video, I want to show you the major secrets which experts hide from you when it comes to Google Ads. But with that, let's go over the first major secret, which is perceived value of your ad. Doesn't matter if it's shopping campaigns, search campaigns, display, discovery, etc. Perceived value is number one. It is literally everything with Google Ads. Here's what I mean. Now, if we take a look at this example right here of a few wooden rocking chairs which come up, we can see that there's a mixture of different types of rocking chairs. Some have a plain white background, others are in real lifestyle backgrounds. However, if you take a closer look at some of these rocking chairs, you'll notice that some of these have higher perceived value over others. Let's now take a second to rank these based on perceived value. Of course, like most users would think, these plain white background rocking chairs are probably on the lowest level of perceived value. Why? Because they're very common, they're very similar to each other. Essentially, they're dime a dozen, which means there's no real kind of uniqueness to them. There's nothing which makes them stand out over these other rocking chairs. Second level, which is a little bit above these white background rocking chairs, are these simple lifestyle photos where it's on a simple wooden platform, or it's in somebody's backyard, or maybe it's in somebody's house. These I qualify as second level product images because the perceived value, while it's there, it's not really at the highest possible value because a lot of these are very similar to each other. They're in a very similar setting, so that's why they kind of blend in with each other. But now here comes level one, the top tier of perceived value, which your e-commerce brand should always be focusing on. Doesn't matter if it's shopping or if it's search. It's product images and just the overall perceived value like this. I mean, if you compare this product image versus this one, there's a night and day difference between these two. And you might be thinking, what's the big deal about this one? It's just in a plain background as well with the beach and the view and the mountains, but it's very similar to all of these. Well, if you kind of take a second to take a closer look, you'll understand that this image right here, it's telling a story. First and foremost, it's telling the story of you potentially chilling on a beach somewhere out in the wild in beautiful nature where the overall kind of weather and the atmosphere is very gloomy, which adds a little bit of contrast to the color of this rocking chair. But in addition, if you look right here, the overall outer outline of this product image, it's white, meaning they have added an outline border to this image, whereas all of these other ones, they're full images, but then Google just cropped them the way they wanted it to, and that's why these look cut off in half. But that's kind of the difference between this one and all these other lifestyle images. This has very high perceived value, and when you combine that with the right kind of product title, pricing, back-end stuff like merchant center, reviews, etc., you want to focus on high perceived value, because if the perceived value is high of your product, of your ad, it can make up for a bad or a mediocre Google ad strategy. So just answer these two questions and you'll already have a very high perceived value ad. Question number one, who is my ideal audience? Question number two, how would my ideal audience portray this product in their mind? Would they envision themselves sitting on a beach somewhere out in the mountains, or would they envision themselves in somebody's backyard? You want to kind of go the route that's less traveled on. And in this case, Bed Bath & Beyond did it perfectly. They saw a lot of these other competitors, they took the route of where it's in the background or it's in somebody's front yard, backyard, house, etc. And they decided to go the route which is less traveled by, which is putting it out in beautiful nature where a user can actually imagine themselves looking out at the waves splashing against the beach while sitting on this rocking chair. But this brings me to secret number two, which is the simplest approach wins, period. Doesn't matter if it's with your shopping campaign, search, whatever you want to do. Take the most simplest route. Here's what I mean. I want to show you this brand right here, which we have been working with under my Google Ads agency or marketing, which, by the way, if you run a brand doing $1 million a year and you want to scale to the next level with Google Ads, go onto my website at yourmarketing.com and schedule a free call with me to see essentially how we can work together and make that happen. But this brand right here has a total of 17 different campaigns running. But with 17 campaigns, it does $1.7 million to $2 million every 30 days. This is not a joke, because if we change this to last 14 days, they've done $815,000 in revenue in 14 days. This is something which many brands barely do a year. This brand is doing it in 14 days, and it's only 17 campaigns. You want to always go with the simplest possible route, because although up front it might look like you're barely doing any work and it might look like there's barely any activity, the reality is the simpler the approach, the easier the time the algorithm has to find your perfect customer, to find your perfect audience. So once it does that, once your results are through the roof, then by all means expand your strategy, go above and beyond with multiple campaign tabs and so much more. But until you get to that point, you want to keep it as simple as possible, which now brings me to secret number 3, which is set restrictions only when the data tells you. And I see this happen across so many brands I audit regularly, or just e-commerce store owners I speak with. They think that just going in and starting a random smart shopping campaign, or a performance max campaign in this case, with a target ROAS set of whatever they want is the way to go. So what they do is they go inside their performance max campaigns and then they set random arbitrary numbers. These are numbers which are basically what they want to hit as a business. Maybe it's their break-even profit margin, maybe it's their break-even target ROAS, but the reality is you should only be doing this once you have significant amount of data backing this number up. So you see right here, we've set this target ROAS for this campaign at 1,050%, which is a 10.5x ROAS. But we didn't just set this last night or just after we started this campaign or this ad account. This account has been running for years and years, has tens of millions of dollars worth of ad spend, which is why we're able to come in and we're able to set these very significant restrictions and actually achieve them. It's because there's a lot of data which backs it up. And I'm not saying you have to spend millions and millions of dollars before you can set restrictions, but you should at least have a couple $1,000s, over $10,000 worth of data before you go in and start setting these random arbitrary numbers. Otherwise, it's just a guess. And if it's just a guess, Google's algorithm is going to have a lot of trouble really finding the ideal customer for your brand. But this now brings us to secret number 4, which is bad data can completely harm your entire ad account. Here's what I mean. If you have, for example, improper conversion tracking, or if you have the wrong strategy going on, or if you never focused on the product feed and just your foundations as a whole, well, now you don't really have the best potential approach for your e-commerce brand when it comes to Google Ads. And the problem with this is now your entire account is optimizing based on that data which is lacking, based on improper conversion tracking, or based on a very weak product feed. All these things lead your algorithm to the wrong audience, to the wrong user. And when you see this happening, you'll probably notice your average cost per link click going up through the roof. You'll probably also notice your search impression share is starting to go down drastically, and it's barely at any type of measurable numbers. It's below 10% or so. This is super important because let's assume within the 14-day period, you have 9 million impressions on your ad account. Well, now, because you have improper setup, because your conversion tracking, and there's just so many other problems with your accounts, you just got 9 million impressions of the wrong people, which means 9 million data points entered your ad account, which is stuck within your ad account for the next 30, 60, 90 days. You can't do anything about that. This brings us now to the final secret on the list, which is the Google Ads strategy that focuses on general audiences versus targeted audiences. I can't tell you how many millions of dollars worth of testing I've done within different brands, niches, industries, etc. And one strategy has always outshined the others. This is the general versus narrowed approach. What do I mean by this exactly? Well, what you want to be doing with this approach is 20% of your budget should be going towards extremely general audiences. This means maybe a performance max campaign or a standard shopping campaign that's based on smart bidding with no target ROAS set or no restrictions at all. What this does is essentially it makes the algorithm for that campaign go after an extremely broad audience, and you want to only push about 20% of your budget to these audiences and to these campaigns. Now, it can be where your entire performance max campaign approach is just no target ROAS set. That's completely fine too. But if you're not getting the desired results, usually you want to keep it to 20%, and then the rest of the 80% of the budget should be going towards more targeted campaigns, such as performance max campaigns with restrictions like bidding restrictions, or standard shopping campaigns with bids, or even if it's smart bidding, also restrictions. Same with search campaigns and so on and so forth. Then having a mixture of these two campaign types really lets the algorithm do its job properly, and it lets the flow of data come in from general audiences as well as very narrowed audiences. But essentially, that's the approach we take for majority of the brands we handle under my Google Ads agency, Euro Marketing, which again, if you run a brand doing $1 million a year and you want to scale to the very next level with Google Ads, go onto my website at euromarketing.com and schedule a free call with me to see essentially how we can work together and make that happen. But check out this video right here on a case study we did using these 5 tips and tricks to scale this brand to multi 7 figures with Google Ads.